updates on the Trump impeachment, AOC tweets, and the coming secession from the United States. These story and more in your Not So News update. Starting us off from the Independent, we have that Trump loyalist Josh Hawley ignores impeachment trial evidence by sitting in gallery to review paperwork. So what they go into the story is Josh Hawley, who is one of the main senators who objected to the to the election results, was apparently the first senator to leave the Senate floor while all the other senators were at their desk. We have from the Independent, all other 99 senators were seated at their desk on the Senate floor, except for Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, the president of the chamber, who's presiding over the trial from the top perch atop the. Mr. Hawley later explained his decision to sit in the gallery, where he essentially says that it's a better view. Something that's not noticed in here, though, is the obvious that this was actually encouraged. So yesterday, the PBS put up a bunch of questions, and one of these came from, are senators required to be physically present for all of the proceedings, or can they choose not to show up on the day, for instance, that the impeachment managers decide to show the videos? And the answer is, senators are required by the rules to be present and at their desk. However, because of the coronavirus pandemic, the Senate is making some adjustments to this. Senators will be allowed to sit in the balconies of the chamber, as well as in adjoining rooms where there will be television monitors. So my question is for all 50 of the Democratic senators, why do they not care about the pandemic? Why are they sitting at their desk? If you've seen the photos during the impeachment trials, there's normally 3 or 4 senators to a desk, and they're all, 3-4 feet away. I can only assume that every senator besides Josh Hawley is trying to spread the virus, or they're just virtue signaling. To be a little bit more serious about this whole matter, this is just the framing that we see. If we saw that the first senator to leave the Senate floor was a Democrat, we know we would be getting cheers to them for, how much they care about their colleagues, how much they care about, saving, their fellow members, how much, they're showing how we should take coronavirus seriously. Josh Hawley leaves the Senate probably just to be comfortable. Let's be honest. It's probably not that great sitting in a chair all day. I have to do it myself. And it is what it is. We're making a fuss out of nothing. Next, continuing on impeachment, we have from Reuters, they go into Representative Plaskett, who said Capitol March was not permitted until Trump got involved. During the Senate impeachment trial on Wednesday, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett said it was not until after President Trump and his team became involved in the planning of that march, the march from the ellipse to the Capitol came about. I'm really not sure what the argument is that she was trying to make with the statement, or really her point at all. In general, marches aren't just allowed, they're actually encouraged. Something we've talked about a lot is March for Life happens, every year except last year for the last 4 or 5 decades, since Roe v. Wade. We've had, actually it's less than, sorry. We've had the Women's March, we've had multiple LGBT marches, we've had BLM marches and protests and everything. And in general, protests and marching are the encouraged way that we look to protest. It, normally shutting down a road for a while, it's a disturbance to people to make your presence known. I'm not sure whether she didn't like that there was a march or that it was Trump planning the march. I'm assuming that she's claiming the latter is the. Next, we have some excellent journalisming from NotTheBee. We have, here's AOC claiming she never said Ted Cruz tried to have her murdered, along with her tweet saying Ted Cruz tried to have her murdered. So we'll start with the AOC clip.
Tweeted that he tried to have you murdered at Capitol, the Capitol riot.
So that's not the quote, okay. And I will not apologize for what I said.
So if we look at her exact quote, she says, "I am happy to work with Republicans on this issue where there's common ground, but you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago. You can sit this one out. Happy to work with almost any other GP that aren't trying to get me killed. In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign." They, NotTheBee, jokingly zooms in on the part where she says, "You almost had me murdered." However, she has the audacity to say, obviously, the false or the opposite of that statement. This, I often rant about the double standard in media, and I often I wonder why I even bother. It's something that we've come not just to learn about, but it's something we've come to expect, that mainstream media do not hold Democrats accountable for this type of doublespeak, where they almost, retroactively can change what happened in the past by just claiming it so. This is something we've seen throughout the last decades of just the media cover up for the inadequacies of the Democrats to keep and maintain a coherent statement. AOC could easily have said, sorry, I was frustrated in the moment, and apologized. And I think she would have gotten significant praise from both sides of the aisle for doing that and standing up. However, she's gone out of her way to keep this fraction in the next two stories. I'm looking at how this fraction in the country is coming and further dividing us to the point where I genuinely believe in probably the next 20 years, there will be two United States in a completely legal sense. First, we have from Slate, it sure looks like Trump will face criminal charges for election fraud. What they're going into this is the Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has opened a criminal investigation into Donald Trump to interfere with Georgia's election. This is responding to the phone call that Trump had with the Georgia Secretary of State, asking him to, quote, bind the votes. However, what everyone has realized by now that's done any type of investigation into this phone call is that the 11,000 votes that Trump was asking to find were in reference to about 200,000 different votes and problems that he had with the Georgia election. And this included from mostly them having different data than what the Secretary of State and the state was publishing publicly for the data for what they used for determining who was a legal vote. And then what they claimed in the phone call was that they had a private set of data that was different than the public set of data for what they were using to verify votes. Obviously, this is what people talk about when they're asking for things to be made public. If anyone just hears, I just want to find 11,780 votes, what Trump said does sound like an issue. However, if you just take a second to look at the call, to listen to it, I'd say a second, it was about an hour call, but you need to actually do it and look into this. I think it's extremely frustrating that out of an hour call, everyone knows about 5 words of it. This 11,780 votes. No one is looking into the context of what Trump was stating and would rather just hold someone who they did not like as president accountable for something he didn't do. And that's almost what we see with this impeachment. I've called multiple times that if they genuinely believe Trump committed a high crime or misdemeanor in his incitement of violence at the Capitol, then they would be holding criminally responsible, not just impeachment. They are not, I don't think they're even genuinely afraid of Trump running in 2024. I personally don't think Trump would win if he ran in 2024. I don't think he would win the Republican primary. What they're seeing though is just this holding on, this lack of moving on on really both sides of the aisle from Trump. This and the impeachment, in my opinion, are the biggest evidences of the Democrats' lack of moving forward. You see the Democrats claiming Liz Cheney and MTG, regardless of how they're voting on things, they show that Trump group is just whack, and the 44 Republicans in the Senate that voted against the impeachment constitutionality, they obviously weren't arguing based on constitutionality. They just want to protect Trump. This language needs to absolutely stop, or else we will see the splitting of this nation. Missouri House passes a ban on enforcement of federal gun law. This comes from KSHB, which is a Kansas City local news station. In it, they say Jefferson County, the Missouri House on Tuesday passed a bill to ban local police from enforcing federal gun laws in an effort to stymie implementation of any federal gun restrictions enacted under Democrat President Joe Biden. The Republican-led House voted 103 to 43 in favor of the bill. This, if anyone's been questioning whether we see a split in this country, this shows really the most obvious first steps. We saw it, a couple of years ago with states undermining, the quote-unquote war on drugs or whatever with legalizing marijuana. This is obviously a step with gun legislation. And you know, the entire purpose of the Second Amendment was to have the ability to fight against what was considered a tyrannical government. I think what the left is, for whatever reason, not understanding is that the Trump protesters at the Capitol riot genuinely felt like their voice was not being. They felt disenfranchised with the system. I really want them to take a minute to think about the logic that they use in defending the BLM riots and protests over the last summer. And honestly, you could probably map every single argument that they said to the protesters you saw at the Capitol. I think if they don't do that, it's only a matter of time for Missouri to then secede from Texas would join them, Florida would join them, and you would see, you know, almost this entire Midwest leave the nation. As a result, you would probably see like California and the West Coast turn into its own United States. You would probably see New England turn into its own United States, and we would really get 3 countries. You know, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's time. If we're not willing to come together now, you don't need, you know, unity talks when they're bad. And the unfortunate thing that I see is even with every single call, we don't even see the lip service or like photo ops that Biden has been trying to do with Republicans. It's hard to say that there's a call for unity when it's just come to my side. And that's the issue that we have. This is your February 11th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you know, and have a good one.